This story started with a film I saw, shot at the 1958 Brussels World's Fair. Among all the exhibitions celebrating the West's achievements and future, there was one very different one. Visitors could enjoy a make-believe native village featuring imported Africans acting out a simulation of their lives. It was the last human zoo. You know, this is such a banal scene. A little African girl. She's just toddling around. The only thing that makes it unusual is this barrier. The minute you put someone on a stage or separate them in some way, then it changes the dynamic. There is nothing distinct about this girl at all, but she is now a spectacle. You just want to protect her. Maybe I'm thinking about the kids in my own family being treated this way, and that's really disturbing. You know, this is post-Second World War. This is the age of the decolonization of Africa, and yet this was still going on. It just seems as if it's a real throwback to a much darker age. The film got me thinking, how did human zoos begin? What was it like to be displayed in one? And what legacy had they left behind? To find out, I had to start my investigation back in the 19th century, when Britain was at the height of its imperial power. Back then, people were fed stories that justified Britain ruling over 400 million people, conquering the land and plundering the resources of a quarter of the globe. The public was hungry for tales of these exotic lands. And in the 1870s, an ambitious impresario came up with a way to feed its appetite. Karl Hagenbeck, who was an animal dealer from Hamburg in Germany, and he had all of these contacts around the world, you know, finding animals for zoos and private collections, and he decided that actually he could do something bigger than that. So he came up with this idea to show humans, being the most exotic creature of them all, as savages in a natural state. That's his words. He was elaborating on an idea that he'd already developed with animals, where he would not just put an animal in a cage, but create a set of the environment that that animal would come from, a polar bear, a lion, whatever it might be, and he wanted to do the same with human beings. Hagenbeck's success inspired other shows featuring colonized people on display. Some were traveling stage shows. Others were more like human animal parks with spectators wandering through. For many, it was the first time seeing black and brown people with their own eyes. Perhaps the purpose was entertainment, but these shows inevitably presented racial hierarchy as the natural order. They presented the performers as people who the West could dominate, because they were supposedly inferior, primitive, savages. I've always been interested in that relationship between the past and the present. It's something I return to a lot in my writing. In my last novel, The Fortune Men, there is a man, a Somali man, born in the same hometown as me, who was described by his own defense barrister as a savage, as a semi-civilized savage. And eventually he was executed for a crime he didn't commit. And it's made me want to understand, where did the idea of the savage even come from? People are still referred to as savages. In the London riots, I remember people being referred to as savages. So these ideas have never gone away. They're still around us.